Hello, hello. Checking the sound. Let me know if you can hear the music, if you can hear the voice, if it's loud enough, if it's not loud enough, how it sounds. Let me know in the chat what you think. Can always boost things up a bit here. All right, bring that back down here. Let me know if you can hear the voice, if you can hear the music, what's going on in the, how it's coming out on the other end. So just let me know. I want to make sure that if we're live, we're actually live. So go ahead and write that in the chat. Welcome everybody. Saturday afternoon here in beautiful Colorado, wherever you are in the world. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you here to hang out a little bit on this this lovely afternoon. It's yeah, I wanted to hang out a little bit today and actually do some music. One of the things that I talk to people all the time about these streams, afterwards and online during them and stuff like that. One of the things that I hear sometimes is like, yeah, we love the information and the tutorial and the how to do stuff, like individual things, like the explanation, but want to see more of the process, like how is the actual music made. And so that's the idea here today, is to to get into making some of the music a little bit, and with the idea of doing it in an improvised way. Everything that I enjoy most is the improvisational side of it. I try to bring that into my production, and obviously the performance side is like that as well. So yeah, I wanted to start from scratch. So what I figured I'd do is just kind of go in and blank everything out, make sure there was nothing in here. Yeah, I can clear this a lot easier this way. Go by channel. Again, easiest way to do it. Little tip with the Oxy is if you go in and you hold down the delete, it not only deletes everything that's on here as far as steps go, but it also deletes your settings. So I like to go in by channel and delete individual channels so that it doesn't end up going in and deleting out the settings, because I like to keep the key and that kind of stuff all working the way it's supposed to in order to make the music the way I like to make it. So yeah, so welcome. So first of all, really quick, just kind of the way everything's set up before we get started. Actually, even before we do that, if you're in the chat, if you have a question or a comment, or if there's something that you can't see or hear that's unclear, you'd like me to go into more detail about, please go ahead and write that in the chat. I'm happy to go over whatever you'd like to today. But in the meantime, I'm just going to kind of run through some stuff and see where it goes from there. So first of all, just kind of going through the setup, the way I have things set up. The mixer that's here in the case is kind of the main mixer for everything. So I have, my case is set up as basically voices and effects to be able to be used live performance. I can't save presets in any of this stuff, or I guess you can in some of them, but I don't. I like to have everything like here just the way it is, so that I'm kind of making the sounds on the fly and kind of manipulating the gear on the fly to make what I'd like to make. Then I've got over here on the side the Digitakt 2, a little bit more structure going on here, where this is a sample-based workflow. So I've got specific samples that I kind of set up as a kit. Every pattern for me is a kit. It's the way that I used to work with the Digitakt 1. Even though the 2 has kits, I don't generally work that way. I have saved a few kits in there, but it's not necessarily the way I work. I like the idea of a pattern per kit, because I'm not saving sequences per pattern, so I don't really need patterns, so they can be kits for me. So generally what I have going on here is that the 1 through 9 tends to be more drums and percussion sounding. So it'll be like, let's see, I don't know if you can hear this one, just because it's more of a subby kick sound. Then clap or snare, a couple percussion sounds, closed hat, open hat, and then usually toms on 7 and 8. Then 9 through 16 are other samples that are more tonal and not the percussive things. So things that I would use more for bass lines or melodies or, you know, things like that. So 9 and basically 9 to 12, I have go from lower frequency to higher frequency. So it'll be more of a bass, something kind of bassy-ish, mid-ish, then kind of high mids, and then high. So a group of sounds that each one of those sounds, I know they go well together and they kind of play well together frequency-wise. They have the same kind of mood, if you want. So for example, if I was going to be making house music, I would use sounds that were more geared towards that. It might be more kind of piano stabs or chords or things. And if I'm doing something that's more kind of dark industrial techno, it might be more like metallic, atonal, things like that. So group sounds that kind of go together with the mood of what you're gonna make. And then 13 through 16, I've started using those tracks for loops. Now that the Digitakt 2 can time stretch, I have those set up so that each one of them is a loop. Most of them were either recorded from this modular or from my studio modular that's over there behind me. I don't know if you can see it if I move out of the way there. That's it over there. So I'll record things from that and then I'll load those loops into here. So it would be something like, let's go to the mixer. So that's one of the samples. That's another one. Let's bring up 15. That's another one, and then 16. So sounds that they aren't too melodic. And the reason for that is, first of all, that's not really the style of music that I do. But secondly, it means that I can more easily improvise with them. They can more easily be mixed and matched in with whatever else I want to mix and match them with. So it's easy to bring those sounds in with other stuff and not have to worry about, you know, does this melody fit with this melody? Are they in the same key? If I change melodies, do I have to worry about changing keys on other things? So really setting things up in the Digitakt in a way that it's all very kind of useful to get started with. So then we go over here to the Oxy. The Oxy is the sequencer that's controlling everything. So everything that's in the modular is 100% sequenced from the Oxy. And within the Digitakt, I'm sequencing tracks 1 through 8 within the Digitakt, so using the Electron sequencer that's in there. And then 9 through 16, it kind of depends. Sometimes I'll sequence them from here if I want to do something that's more melodic and I want to be able to keep it to the key that I'm in, because this can do random note generation in key where this cannot. And so if that's the case, I'll use it from here. Otherwise, I'll still sequence those from within the Digitakt, just because it's an easy, fun sequencer. It's a great, super powerful workflow. So I tend to do it that way. And then the 13 through 16, because they're loops, I generally sequence those from in here, because all that really is just laying down a trigger on the first track, on the first note of the track, and then you let that loop through for as long as it's going to loop through. And if you're using the stretch engine in the Digitakt, it'll time stretch it. So as you change tempo, it'll keep it in time without kind of changing the pitch. So yeah, and then audio wise, so well, first of all, the Oxy's sequencing everything, some over CV, some over MIDI, and then the audio signal, all of the voices that are in here are going into their own channels in the performance mixer. Then I have the outputs from the Digitakt going into the mix in on the mixer, so it's like a non-controllable auxiliary in. And then I have my main outs from the mixer that are going to the Analog Heat Plus effects, which you can't see, it's underneath it's there. And I have a preset that I built a long time ago, and that's kind of the only thing that I use in the Analog Heat Plus effects, and I just kind of run it through there to get that kind of final bit of mostly saturation and a little bit of drive at the end, and then I mono the bass and that. And that's pretty much it audio-wise. There's a couple of interesting audio routing things inside here. Coming out of this kick drum module, I actually have two different, so it splits that signal right here. One of them goes into the Ghost, into the sidechain input, so that if I use like a big effects wash within the Ghost, I can sidechain the kick from within there and kind of move that out of the way so it doesn't clutter things up too bad. And the other duplicate of that is going into one of the inputs in the Digitact, and I'm using the sidechain compressor within the Digitact to sidechain all of the tracks except for the input track, which is that, and the input track I have muted. So the kick is going in muted, so you don't hear it, but it's triggering the sidechain compressor to be able to sidechain anything that's in here. So what that does is it allows me to sidechain any of these sounds and sidechain the kind of effects wash, reverby, delay stuff that's going on in the Ghost. And then anything within the other voices, I'm not really sidechaining. I will do any of that stuff by sequencing them differently, instead of trying to, make a pattern that clashes and then find a way to sidechain it out of the way. These are just things that are a bit harder to control because of the effects. And so I wanted to be able to control that part of it by putting that out. So anyway, that's kind of the way it's set up. And now, like, why is it set up that way? Well, the idea of this whole setup, the kind of purpose for which this was built is improvisational live performance. So what does that mean? What's the difference between that and other kinds of live performance? Well, live performance has this kind of, there's all these different shades of live performance. And I would say on one end would be completely DJing an already completed track, right? So you're up there, you play a track, and that track was produced somewhere else, and you're just letting that track play through, and then you're mixing into another track. So that's kind of the least live of live. Then on the far extreme would be somebody who is improvising totally from scratch, meaning that, they're a keyboard player and they're playing, kind of like jazz improv style keyboard, but whether it's techno or house or whatever, it doesn't have to be jazz. I'm just using that as a style. The fact that they're making it up on the fly and they're actually playing that instrument on the fly, and they're playing everything. Sometimes people that are doing that are also looping. So they might have a live looper and they play something live that they loop, and then they play a new thing and they loop that as well, and they kind of build tracks out that way. So that's kind of the other extreme of playing live. Getting up there with a guitar, soloing, that's playing live all the way in the end. And in the middle, there's all sorts of versions of that. So some part of that is maybe having some samples that are prepared. Some parts of that might be having, preset sounds or sequencing patterns and saving those patterns so that you can use them later on. So there's all different shades within there. Closer on the DJ style, you have the kind of like Ableton Live. Like the reason why it was called Ableton Live is because it was designed to play your tracks live, meaning that you could build a track into stems that were loaded in as clips, and then you could launch groups of clips live, saying like, I'm gonna launch this group, and that's gonna be my whole track that I created. And I can take certain ones out or put them back in, but I'm not actually making it at the moment. It was made ahead of time, and then I'm using those things that were pre-prepared to basically DJ the stems of my track. And then going into the next track that's already set up as stems. Then you kind of go into the area where you're using either samples or sequences that are pre-prepared, maybe in hardware, maybe in a computer, and you've kind of taken something that you've produced, and then you break it into pieces, and then you reassemble it and play around with it live in front of a crowd. And then you've got different versions of that. It just keeps getting, more and more live, I guess, as you go farther down the spectrum. I think the vast majority of live performers that I see out there today are in this kind of range where they're saying like, I have certain things I've pre-prepared, and then I have certain things that I've kind of left the door open to perform live. And then, that's where most of the live performances that you see on a big stage, that's what they're doing because they want to make sure that the quality's there. So they're not, they don't want to take the risk of just winging it and, letting it potentially go totally off the rails when you're on a big stage in front of a big crowd. And so that's one part of it. And then you get to see less and less of that as you get more and more towards the really extreme live side of things. I would say I fit in this area a little bit, like between that pre-preparing, but yet still playing a bunch of stuff live and the totally live side, because I'm not a keyboard player, so I'm not like playing stuff live. I'm not free form choosing notes that I know because of my music theory background or things like that, or chord progressions and chord changes that I hear in my head and then I'm putting that down. I'm using certain guardrails to allow me to do kind of free form live writing and live producing music on the fly in front of the crowd, but within some guardrails. So like, for example, setting up kits of sounds for me is a guardrail that I have. Having a sequencer that I can set to a certain key, so I know that as long as my oscillators are tuned and things like that, I know that anything I do will be within key. So I don't have to be able to play it on the keyboard live and keep it in key and be good enough at that I'm not going to hit a wrong note. But I also am not pre-preparing sequences and pre-preparing songs and parts and sections and patterns and loops and transitions and things like that. So that's kind of where this kind of middle area for me is of improvised live performance. And so that's why I wanted to go over this today, was to show you how this is set up and then a little bit about why it's set up, and then kind of get into what's the end result. What can you actually do with it? So basically right now, these sequencers are all blank, right? There's nothing into that. And this is kind of how I start a show. So when I show up for a show, I will usually kind of have the sequences that are in there from the last time I was kind of jamming and practicing. So I'll get up to do a sound check using that stuff. And so I don't have to just like waste everybody's time coming up with something in the moment. So I'll do sound check with that stuff. And then once the sound check time is done, the next thing that I do is I go in and I blank out my sequencers. I take out any of that stuff that was in there and, kind of delete out the sequences. So like if you were to go into here and we were to go through, like you go into these tracks, there's nothing on any of these tracks, right? So what this does is it gives me this, it's a blank slate to start from as far as the writing process of writing the music. But it's not quite a total blank slate because I do have some certain things set up in advance. Like the way this is routed, I know which instrument each one of the sequencers is going to. The key that it's set up in. So I put all four tracks, all four sequencers into the same key. So I know that I'm gonna at least have that guardrail. I have things MIDI and clock synced together. So I have that guardrail. So I'm not like patching live. I'm not plugging in live. I'm not doing settings live. But as far as the rest of it goes, it's improvised live. Now that said, when I get started making something, which is what we're going to jump into right now. And again, if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat, and I'm happy to stop on something or go back to something or whatever. I'm just rambling here, so if you've got something you want to see, definitely let me know. So that said, generally what I'll do, kind of first and foremost, is I'll set kind of some foundational elements that I know I'll use, right? Even no matter what direction I go, just because of the style of music that I'm doing, there's certain things that I know I'm going to use. So for example, on sequencer 1 here, I've set up as a multi-sequencer. Track 1 is my kick module here. So I know I'm going to use a 4 on the floor kick. Right? So I'm just gonna put that in already. Now I'm gonna change that up while I play, and I will adjust and make other patterns within that, but I know I'm gonna use that 4 on the floor kick. Now, track 2 is a closed hat pattern, which is going to the closed hat input on the Archer's rig from Shachmat. I have it set up to do more percussion than hats. So I won't necessarily put in a hat pattern here. I may put in, you know, a random thing that I might use for percussion, who knows? Or I might not. I might just save that for later on. Then track 3 is the open hat one of this. So often I'll go in and I'll just put in an open hat because again, I know I'm going to use that at some point. Now, this isn't really set up that way right now, so I'm just going to leave the kick and that's it and move over to the Digitact first, and then we'll come back to the more melodic elements. In the Digitact, I tend to do the same thing where I'll go into my 1 through 8 into my drums and I'll kind of set up some foundational drums. Okay, so again, you heard like what was on each of these. So generally, on track 1, this is a kick track, but it's a filtered down kick that I'll use as kind of the rumble to this kick. So if I go into this one, I'm not going to put in, you know, a 4 on the floor kick because I've already got that here. What I am going to do is probably the opposite. I might put in, you know, those 3 so that it gives me a bit of a rumble sound. It gives the sound of that delay that I would get. So if I bring up my kick and I bring up this track, it'll sound something like this. Right? So it gives me just kind of a basis that I know I would use that at some time, but I'll mute it for right now. Then if we were to go to track 2, on track 2, that's a clap or a snare. So generally that's going to be, oops, go here, track 2. So that would generally be on the 2 and the 4. So I'll just leave that like that. Then go to track 3 and 4. Those are percussion. So I kind of leave those because again, that's something I like to improvise on later and I don't want it to be foundational. 5 and 6 being closed hat and open hat, that's what I'll put in foundationally, just like what I was talking about over here. So if I go to track 5, that's going to be a, oops, that's not where I want it to be at. On track 5, that will be a closed hat, right? 16th note, closed hat. And I'll go in and mess with this later on, but this is kind of foundational elements. Again, track 6, open hat, so that's going to look like that. And then 7 and 8, again, toms, I'm going to use those more for groove, and that'll be something that will be unique to what I'm making. So I won't necessarily do anything with those right now. So what this does is this gives me a place where I can kind of start from, and I'll have I've got a 4 on the floor kick drum, great thing for the kind of techno that I do. And if I decide now that I want to bring in a rumble to go with that, I can do that. If I want to bring in a clap or snare, I've got that in a place that I know, and then I've got my 2 hi-hats. Right? So I know I have these kind of foundational elements, and I like to have those kind of just there because I don't want to waste my time while I'm performing coming up. So often, I will start before my show just with these things just like this. And this is kind of it. That's kind of like the setup. Now, I don't have any presets in here. So anything that I do melodically within this or effects wise within this is going to be all done kind of in the moment. That includes sequencing from the Oxy, and that includes sound design within these instruments. So all that is done without any kind of pre-preparation before the show. And then the same thing goes for the kind of more melodic elements over here. Now, you saw 13 through 16, because those are loops, I have those as, that's kind of like a safety net thing, where if I need something and I don't have an idea, I don't have the time in the moment, or I can't quite dial in exactly what I'm looking for, and I need to bring in an element just to keep the flow of the music going, I've got a few of those kind of safety net things that I can bring in. So if this is kind of cruising along, and let's say we were doing this, but I didn't have kind of anything that I was doing, and I wanted to bring something in, I can just bring in it. Oh, you know what? It's because I took the sequence off there. right? So that can give me something kind of in the background that I can do something with if I want to, right? So as really like as a safety net type thing more than anything else. And it's not, those aren't like pieces and parts of a track that I'm gonna say, okay, yeah, these sections together are gonna go together and be, you know, the intro or the breakdown or the whatever. So it's, again, I look at them more as kind of tools, almost like a voice in the modular is, you know, a sample loop that I'd be using at that time. So with that said, the, you know, this, again, this is kind of like my starting point. So then what do I do when I get started up there? So often I will want to start off something, depending on how the show goes, I'll want to start off with something that's maybe not necessarily rhythmical, because often I'm either trying to mix into someone else who's finishing what they're doing, if it's more of a DJ style show, or if it's more of like a showcase, I'm gonna wanna have like an intro. It's like kind of the easiest way, I think, to get into things. So often what I'll do is I'll use one of these kind of filler patterns, and I'll just start off with that, right? Yeah, I'm gonna mute these back out again. So I might just bring something in like this just to kind of get started. Okay, and that could be an intro, that could be an opening for something. Then I decide, okay, do I want to go right in with a kick drum and kind of get right into it, or do I want to start to build something? I think what I would probably do is I would probably build something at this point. So I would go to one of my synths that I have. So like, let's say the Bastel Pizza. So maybe I would just put in something really simple on this one. Now, another thing I didn't mention too much in this kit, I have on sends, each one of the tracks are going through the Koslin, which is a frequency shifter, and through a filter, and then through the Ghost. So the Ghost is kind of like a wash of effects, and the Koslin shifts frequencies. So for example, here it's like shifting that. And then I've got a filter that's going through as well, so I can really shape the sound of that one. Then that's going through the Endorphins Ghost to add some effect to that, to kind of bring this back here. So you can hear the delay here. You can add in some reverb to it, and then you can change the filter with resonance and pick up different harmonics in there. So that kind of gives me that whole wash that's there. So basically, you've got this kind of background effect or background loop, which I can take out. So everything but this was this background loop. And then everything else that's not that. So everything you're hearing right now is these two notes on the pizza going through the frequency shifter and filter and going into the effects. Going through just the Ghost multi-effects. So then it can come back over here. Right? And so being able to filter out what's going through there with a resonant filter makes it kind of sound like it's other voices that get added in. But if I take those out, this is all that's playing. That's the only actual sequence that's playing right now. Here it is just frequency shifted. And that can be changed. And then it is through the effects. And again, having that pattern in the background can kind of help fill this out as well. And again, we know we have some foundational elements. So if we wanted to bring in a kick right now, maybe a kick that's, with less drive and no transient, so it would sound like it was filtered, because I don't have this kick going through a filter, so that I can bring in something like this. And then you can add drive to it. And then add some transient. Right? And dial that in kind of whatever feels good to you as you go. So then, we get to something like this, and this is just kind of a start. So where do I want to go with this? So what we have playing on the pizza is just a couple notes, but what if we wanted to do kind of a call and response between the pizza and, let's say, the BIA? So you got a blank pattern here with the BIA. If we want to keep it in that kind of really simple vein, maybe we'll just do and then we can send that also through the frequency shifter. And now with both of those sounds going through the frequency shifter, if I change the frequency shifter, it's going to morph and warp both of those together. And then through the filter as well. Then if we wanted to bring in something that was more of a bass pattern with the bass line over here, so we can bring in something that's really like, truly a kind of 4 on the floor bass. A rolling bass, like a 16th bass. All of these changes that are going on now is just keeping those same simple patterns, but changing up things in the sound design side of things. And when you've got something like the Oxy, where you've got the ability to quickly change things and know that it stays in key, you can just change individual notes, for example, in this bass line. Now again, we've got a bunch of improvised things going here. We can now start to use some of those foundational drum elements that we had over here. So let's say we wanted to bring in an offbeat hi-hat in order to kind of get this into a more kind of a bouncy groove. We know we've got one of those. Say instead of the offbeat hats, we wanted to use closed hats. And obviously you get this going on for a little while and you want to do a little bit of a breakdown. We've got the kick out and then we've also got the oxymeta. So we can do something. So let's say we've cruised along with this for a little while and now we want to start moving into something else. We've got a bunch of elements that we've made here that we can change. You know, we can bring out the kick and then change up our bass line. So we've got this, now we've changed up our bass line, we can go in and change up some of these elements too. All right. Well, that's probably enough jamming for now. It seems like there's some people in the chat now. So, yeah. So, happy to answer any questions or talk through anything or show anything or whatever, because the idea was to show starting from scratch and then what that can turn into and kind of how to make it turn into something. So, how it's set up, the foundational elements to kind of build it, and then build it and use it and play it and move stuff around and go from section to section. And but none of that was preset. And so that's kind of the whole way that this system is set up, the whole way I kind of put this together was to have something that lent itself to exactly this, that lent itself to making up stuff, designing sounds on the fly, manipulating sounds, being able to quickly sequence and have ideas and just kind of put them in and then go with them. And so that's the way it works. And you saw, I think, most of the stuff. I didn't do anything melodic over here, but whatever, like sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But the whole idea is to show how those different sections work together. So let's jump into the chat and see if there was anything. Oh, gain staging, you like that. Awesome. That was a while ago. Glad you watched that. Let's see, do I make the patterns myself? So the patterns that are in here that are used as the loop patterns, yeah, they are either made from my modular that's here in the studio or from other studio gear or sampled from this modular. If I have something that I like, I'll just quickly kind of plug it in, sample it into here so I can keep that for later. That's for the most part. I would say that sometimes I'll have sample packs that I like, and I kind of, the problem for me is that most sample packs are a little too specific. So if there's like a melody or a bass line or a pattern or whatever, it's a little too, it only sounds like itself, and it's not flexible enough for me to be able to use for a whole bunch of different things. So sometimes I'll take things like, there's a great sample pack from Soma, the record label Soma, where it's a modular sample pack, and it's basically just modular loops, kind of like what I would sample out of my modular. And so some of those are cool. So if you don't have a modular and you want to do something like this, definitely check that one out. It's on, I know it's on Splice. I think it's probably on LoopCloud as well. But yeah, things like that are when I would use samples that aren't ones that I made. But for the most part, I'd rather make them myself because there's a lot of times that I'll come up with something in studio that I really like a particular loop or riff or whatever, and there's no easy way to take it with me other than sampling it in as a loop and loading it into the Digitakt, and then it's something that I can use later on. So yes, so I do make those myself. Let's see here. Love seeing live play sessions like this. Awesome. Glad you like it. I love doing them. So yeah, maybe I'll do some more of them. Wabbit, good to see you. Good to see you. Didn't care for the clap kept moving. Yeah, I do that. If you really kind of pay close attention to the stuff that I'm doing, it happens often that I'll bring in something and I don't like it, so I'll either take it out or I'll change it really quick. Because I'm not cueing things in my headphones and like pre-planning and writing it out and then bringing it in. I just kind of chuck stuff in and hope it works. And if it doesn't, I'll take it out really quick, or I'll bring it back in later, or I'll use it for something else. But yeah, I'm not much of a clap guy. So claps, for some reason, they grate on me when I put them in, and every once in a while I'll try it and it just doesn't work. So yeah, what is that? Oh, is that a volcano? I can't tell. Christopher, good to see you too. Bunch of people in the chat right now that took my live performance course. So it's good to see you guys hanging out. Nodding head. Excellent. Beam me up to a club where Eric continues to play. Well, I tried to continue to play for a little while. That said, if you do want to see me in a show, I'm going to be playing at NobCon in Chicago coming up in a couple weeks on the 7th of September. And then in possibly, this isn't confirmed yet, but in London on the 10th of October, and then Amsterdam on the 20th of October for ADE. And it'll be an official ADE event, and it's on the Sunday, the last day of ADE. So that'll be a lot of fun. So if you're in any of those places, I would love to see you at a show. That would be a lot of fun. Let's see here. In the zone. Yeah. It's like I get distracted sometimes, and that's kind of, you know, I hope you like it, because if you don't, I'm sorry. I just kind of like go off on these tangents and just like keep going, because again, that's kind of how the setup was designed, is like I get into it like this is what I want to hear. This is the stuff that I want to hear. And if it's not, or if there's something that I do want to hear, that's what I'll make and that's what I'll put in. So I'm kind of doing it for myself while I do that. And then it's, you know, hopefully it comes off okay on that end, but it's in the moment, it's kind of for me, and it's the things that I want to hear. Keep him there. Yeah, thanks. This is what it's all about, being in the moment. Yes, yes, yes. That is all about what it's all about. Whether you're live streaming, whether you're playing in a club, or whether you're just jamming on your gear by yourself, having a good time, that's what it's all about. Have fun, have a good time. And that's what this kind of method, this way that I set things up and perform, is really geared towards. It's geared towards having a good time while you use your gear, rather than being like, oh, it has to be a structure and process this way and this pattern and A section, B section. And it's really not about that. It's really about feeling it. I've DJ'd for like 30 years, and in all that time, the most frustrating thing for me, especially towards the end of time, like most recently when I've DJ'd, I get really frustrated because I'm stuck with whatever the producer wanted to make. And sometimes that's amazing, and sometimes it fits perfectly with the mood of what I want to hear and what the crowd wants to hear, but sometimes it doesn't. And then you're like, okay, I got to find another track, and then where's the part that's going to work the best, and how am I mixing it in with this? And so there's a lot of like, you have to find kind of the best thing that you can for the moment. Where with this, if there's something you want to hear, you can just make it in the moment and make it do what you want it to do, and subtly change to it, rather than having to go through and find a whole nother track and do all that stuff. So yeah, that's what it's all about. Like you said, being in the moment and having a great times. Yep, few things get our heads moving more than music. I agree. Need some flashing lights in the dark room. I should say I have this little app on my phone. I have these light bulbs here that are the I got them on Amazon. They're like the cheap ones that you can control the colors from an app, and there's like certain ones where they flash. I'll do that next time. Let's see. The W fell off from the bounce. I don't know what that means, but that's okay. Hello. Smashing the like button for this banger free concert. Sweet. I love that. Yeah, like it. Subscribe if you're not. All that stuff. Hey, Craig, what's going on? Craig's doing the course right now. Good to have you here. Who else? Interesting how Eric operates the encoders on the Digitact. Yes, so what I use the encoders for a lot on the Digitact is mixer. So I'll go into the mixer mode, and you can kind of scroll between the first 8 and second 8, and this becomes your mixer for these tracks that are in here. And because this is going into a mix in, I don't have any control by track within this mixer, so I have to use this mixer. So a lot of times, for example, if it's the 13th or 16th where there's a loop playing, I'll have those all the way down at 0 until I want to fade something in, and then I'll start that, and then I'll fade it in, right? And so yeah, I use this a lot for that, and then obviously for things like effects and filters and all of that kind of per sound. It is a little bit clunkier doing like filtering and effects in the Digitact than it is in the modular, only because in the modular everything is kind of on the face of it. So if I want to adjust a filter, the knob's right here for this one. I can adjust 2 filters at once. I can do multiple things. Where here, if I want to do the filter on 2 different tracks, I have to go to the track, the filter page, and then adjust it, and then go to the other track and adjust it. So it's not quite as simple, and that's why I have the modular case. Otherwise, it would be just as simple to do the whole show here, because, you know, sonically you can do pretty much everything here that you can do in a modular, but having everything kind of on the face of it for things, specifically voices, like what I have here, it's a lot more playable and more convenient for me to do it that way. It's the reason why I use the Digitact mostly for drums and loops and kind of one-shot things, is because like if it's a drum, I don't need to adjust the parameters of that drum as often. Or if it's a loop, I don't need to adjust the parameters of that as often. Where my voices for bass and leads and percussion and kick and that stuff, those I need to adjust and change up the sound. And so that's why I use the modular for those things, just so that I've got the ease of access to what I want to change up. So let's hear. Oh, James is here too. Man, it's like an alumni reunion of the course today. Awesome. So NobCon, yes, NobCon. Anybody else going to NobCon? So NobCon is the 6th, 7th, 8th, or 7th, yeah, 6th, 7th, 8th of September in Schaumburg, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. It's a great synth convention where you can go and, you know, see the new gear, play around with a whole bunch of stuff. But then there's also like workshops and there's shows at night, and even during the day there's shows as well. So you can go and see performers. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's, you know, it's probably my second favorite synth event after Superbooth. It's way smaller, but what's cool about NobCon is that everybody who goes to NobCon, it's all in one hotel. The conference is in the conference rooms of the hotel, and everybody who goes to it stays there. And so it's cool. At the end of the day, when the conference is done, everybody just kind of moves to the lobby bar. And so then you end up getting a lot more time to kind of meet and talk and socialize and get to know all of the people that are there from the different companies, or the people that are attending, or the performers, or the, you know, YouTubers that are there or whatever. So yeah, it's a ton of fun, and if you can make it work, I would totally recommend it. It's a blast. So this year at NobCon, on the Saturday night, I'll be performing in the big room, which is downstairs in the basement. So I'll be doing a live set, like kind of what I was just doing, but, you know, obviously it'll be different because I don't have these settings anymore. And then on the Sunday at 11 o'clock, I'll be doing a workshop on improvised live performance. So basically what I'm talking about now, but in a live format. So I'll show you what I'm doing, and then there'll be a Q&A session where you can ask me questions. We can go over stuff, and, you know, you can get a chance to kind of come and see the setup close up and see kind of how things are patched, and I don't know, it'll be it'll be something like this, but in a live format. So I'm pretty excited for that. Let's see here. Talk through how you have your Oxy One sequencer set up. Yes, absolutely. So 4 sequencers, each one of them can be a lot of different types of sequencers. So 2, 3, and 4, I have those each set up as a mono sequencer, meaning that it's kind of like a piano roll. So you've got 16 steps, and you've got 8 notes that are in the key that you have. So it's very easy when you're using this version to kind of draw in, or just kind of quickly enter in notes. So like something like here, this is the BIA. So if I was to clear this out, so if I put everything on the bottom note, so that's just going to stay on the root note of this, which is E2. But if I go in and I start adding notes, I'll know it will be in Phrygian E, because that's the scale that I have it locked to. And so I have the freedom to then go in and be really flexible with how I play with this. And so if I have ideas of something that I like, I can do that. And let's say this particular voice, you know, I have this going through the BIA, so I can change this up from a high lead to kind of to mid lead. Okay. Right, so you've got a lot of flexibility with the sound itself. But again, using the Oxy One and talking about how this is set up, using this sequencer this way, it gives me the flexibility to say, okay, so if I want to do, let's say between the pizza, clear this one out. So let's say between the pizza and the BIA, when I was just playing now, I was doing kind of a call and response thing. So I can put in a couple notes in the pizza, and then I can go to the BIA. So when you do something like this, it sounds really simple, but because it's laid out in 16 steps, when you switch back and forth between the two, you can see where those steps are. Right, so I can see that the steps are in the first half, these steps are in the second half. So that's really handy. Or if I want to do something that's a longer pattern, I can draw those notes in like what I was doing before. Right, so it gives me the ability to draw those in. Now, what I like as well is that there's sometimes when I'll think like, oh, I want this to sound more like let's say like an arpeggiator. Well, then I can draw in something that does like an arpeggiation, and then I can play that back again. Right, so it gives you the ability to do that. And if you want to change something up, so like if you want to make this go like, but you like the first one, you've got undo, and you can bounce back to it, or you can shift with that and redo. So you can use it as a way to bounce back and forth between sections, which is super fun. So that's on the mono sequencers. So that's 2, 3, and 4, and those control the bass line, the Bastille Pizza, and the BIA, right? So those are, each one of those is a voice that I would, as melodic as my music is, which is not super melodic, those are the melodic voices, right? So it's bass, leads, and kind of tonal percussion stuff. So that's what those voices do, and that's why they're on the mono tracks, because it's much easier to kind of draw that stuff in. Then sequencer 1 I have set up as a multi, which means that each one of the rows is a sequencer on its own. So you've got 16 steps, kind of like you've got 16 steps over here, or like it would be like on a 909 or an 808. So you've got your 16 steps. So it's easier to do patterns if it's more percussive or drum based. Those are much easier on this. So you can see this is kind of like my drum sequence here. So sequencer 1 is the kick. So what I will do here is, right? So that's just the kick that's on the lower section. Then I have with the Archer's rig, there's 2 different inputs, one for closed hat, one for open hat, and that's what these are, closed and open hat. But I have it set up now as percussion. So if I bring that up, so that's on kind of that percussive step. And then if I unmute this one, right? So that gives me the opportunity to do hats if you want to use this as a hat. But I have been having so much fun using this not as a hat, but using it as that kind of more kind of metallic, almost industrial sounding percussion stuff. With the hats. So it's still got that kind of white noisy sound in with it in the way that I have it set up right now. There's all kinds of different voices in here, so you can use it in different ways. But the reason being that, yeah, I could just sequence this as a closed hat and an open hat and use this as that, like with a 909 sound that it has. But I already have that in the Digitact. And again, those are, going back to the beginning of this chat, those are kind of like the foundational elements. So like, I don't want to waste a module like this just doing something super basic like closed hat, open hat. I would rather have those be just samples and just use that track and use that sample and like not mess around with it. So that's what I do. So like I've got open hats here and closed hats here, so I don't need to do that there. So that allows me to use this as a lot of different sounds again. So right? So there's a ton of flexibility, and that's just one of the voices. There's, I think, 8 different voices. I can't remember in here. So you can do it all different ways. Some of them are geared more towards hats and percussion. There's a sine wave in there, so you can do like bassy stuff if you want to, or you can modulate it. You can use it as a modulator for other stuff. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do, and that's why I have it set up the way I do. But again, because of the style that I'm doing, I'm using it for what I would call tonal percussion. And so that way I'm using it on this kind of drum channel because that's more for percussive stuff. Now with that, if I was to go in and do, because of the type of, so if I get it onto more of a tonal sound, this is again just playing the root notes, so that's an E, but I can hold this down and I can change up the notes. Oh, but I don't have the CV plugged in to do the tone on that because I'm not really doing it with tone, but I can. Let's see here. I have to set this up. So that track 1, 2, 3 is going out. 3. Should be right. Might be in the wrong octave. But anyway, you get the idea. So you can go in and change this tonally if you want to by holding down the step, just like you can on the Elektron sequencer. So if you're in sequencer mode, you can hold down a step and then you can change the note. And so you can kind of parameter lock that note to that step. So you can do that as well with the Oxy. In this mode, whereas in the multi-mode, you don't really need to because you can actually physically draw in the step. You don't have to hold it and lock it. You can just move it to somewhere else. And because it's very visual, the way it looks, it gives you a nice feedback. Another thing that you can do on all of the sequencers is there's the beginning and end. So if you push either of these, you see both. So this is the beginning part of your pattern and this is the end of your pattern. So right now it's set to 16 steps, but if I wanted it to be 8, I could just move that there. Or if I wanted it to be 5, or if I wanted it to be 3, you can move that around wherever you want that to be. And that'll give you interesting ways to change your patterns. Now on the multi, you can do the same thing where you see the ends are here, but I can move the end of every sequencer to a different place. And then when I hit play on this, you'll see they all repeat at different times, right? So it's definitely, you definitely have a lot of flexibility within the multi and also within the mono. Now, each of these 4 sequencers can be any one of the sequencers. And there's other ones. There's chord sequencer, polyphonic, there's a stochastic, there's a matricial. There's all different kinds of sequencers in here. I just like using these ones because I like to keep it simple and not have it be too much to think about when I'm performing live, because I'm doing it improvised, I don't want to have a lot of stuff that I have to worry about. And so having a bunch of different types of sequencers gets confusing. It's like, okay, on this one, what are the settings? On this one, what are the settings? So I just keep it the simplest form I can. Now, because you have all that different kind of flexibility and you can set each one up as any of them. So this multi-track sequencer means that sequencer 1 is actually 8 sequencers. It's an 8-track sequencer all by itself. And all 8 of those can go to different destinations, either CV or over MIDI. And so you have all that flexibility within the multi. If you set all 4 of them as multis, you've got 32 tracks of sequencing that can all go out via CV or gate. You've got 8 CV, 8 gates, and then you've got actually 48 channels of MIDI outgoing from this, independent of one another. So if you have a huge setup and you want to sequence a ton of modular and a bunch of different gear, and you want to sequence like control changes and sequence, parameters within your hardware, each one of those can go out on a different MIDI channel because you've got tons of them. So that's the way I have it set up. Multi-track on 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all mono sequencers because that's the type of voice that I have them going to. and one is used for drums and percussion right now. Now, because I only have 3 drums and percussion in my case right now, the other 5 tracks is what I would use to sequence the Digitakt. So I can send those out via MIDI and have them if I wanted to do them. So if I wanted to do in a pattern and then I wanted to send that pattern out via MIDI, I can just dial in which channel I want it to go out on, whichever channel I want it to talk to over here. And then that one channel is sending MIDI while these channels are all sending CV and gate to the modular setup. So you can mix and match those as well. It doesn't have to be all one or all the other. So then like, you know, track 5 could be CV, track 6 could be CV, then track 7 and 8 could each be different MIDI going to different places. So it gives you a lot of different flexibility. So one of the things I dig about it. So yeah, let's see what else we got going here. I feel like there isn't, but is there a way to set the off button on Meta to only turn off once the button is released? Like the way the filter switch on Carbon works. There is not a way to do that, but knowing Manuel, if you told him that you wanted that, he would probably be like, oh yeah, that's no problem. I'll code that and send you an update in 15 minutes. But no, I use it, you kind of get used to using it. I get what you mean, that you would want to be able to hold it and then release it by letting it go. But you really get used to it. You get used to kind of like hovering over it, and then when you want it to release, you just release it. So yeah, there isn't a way to do that now, but I don't think you would miss it if you were using the Meta actually, but you never know. Let's see here. What else do we have? Sorry, lots to scroll through here. Playing with the Oxy One on my iPad, no wires, just fun. Yeah, that's a blast. Jan, good to see you too. I didn't realize that was you. Another alumni. I feel like I should give like the quick little pitch for the course. A whole bunch of people that are in the chat here took my course last month. Some are in the course this month. There's a new session starting on September 5th, which is on pre-sale right now. So if you want to go to circlelive.com/courses, or there's a link down in the description of this video, you can go and sign up for the performance course. And it's basically a 50+ video course that you can do, you know, whenever you want, self-paced. You can watch them and rewatch them as many times as you want. And then during the month of the session, 2 times a week, we get together for a group Zoom call where we go over, each time it's a different theme from the course. There's 8 different sections, and we go over that in the Zoom call. And so everybody can ask their questions. I can go into more in-depth detail on specific things from that section or about whatever else. You also get to send in once a week a recording of you performing live, and I'll send you some email feedback on it, as far as the performance, the mixing, the sound selection, the flow, the transitions, the use of the sound design, all that kind of stuff. So I give you that feedback once a week for 4 weeks. And then there's also included in the course is a 1-hour one-on-one Zoom call with me where we can go over whatever you want. So if you want to go over your rig or do a specific in-depth, you know, hour-long session on the Oxy One or on the Digitakt or a specific module or something like that, we could do that. And then one of my favorite parts about it is that by being in the course, it gets you into this kind of private online community of all the people who have taken the course. So everybody's still in there that's taken the course from the past. And so you can work with each other. You can share questions and comments and share your mixes and you know, ask about gear that one may have that you're thinking about getting, or if you're neighbors or in the same city, talk about, you know, getting together to play or potentially putting together a show or whatever. So it's a lot of fun, and for me, it's a lot more fun than a Discord, because in Discord, it just ends up being anybody can go on there. So you get a bunch of trolls that just go on to shit on people's gear selections and whatever. And this is really people who have decided to invest in improving their live performance. And so everybody comes at it from the same place. Everybody's like, I'm working on getting better, and these are all people that can help me get better. And some are in the course and have done the course to perform live in front of a crowd. Some are doing it just to learn how to jam, like what I was just doing a little while ago, and having fun for yourself. Others have a bunch of gear and they just want to learn how to use it better and how to, potentially come up with some more creative ways to use it. So it's a lot of fun. The September session is going to be the last one until winter. So if you're thinking about taking it, definitely jump on it now. The space is pretty limited. So go ahead and sign up for that now. And that one again starts on September 5th and goes until is it 28th, I think, or maybe the 3rd, kind of depending. Well, it depends on when the last session will be of the calls. But yeah, so it's a lot of fun. You can ask anybody who's in the chat that if they took the course, I'm sure they'll let you know what they thought of it. So yeah, and they've all kind of gotten to know each other, which is fun too. You kind of get to know a bunch more nerds beyond the live chat. You can actually talk with people and actually see a human face as you're talking to people, which is a lot of fun. Let's see, do I miss my Syntakt in my setup? I don't, actually. And the reason being, I was using the Syntakt for voices, and I loved it because I could get 12 voices into one box. And I could sequence them independently, and so it was like basically having 12 mono synths in one box. Now with the Digitakt 2, because it has 16 tracks, I've got the 8 that I still use for drums, and I have another 8 that I can use for voices. So I don't feel like I'm missing it. I have 4 less, but that's okay. I was only usually using 8 in any given kit anyway. So yeah, so this allows me to have that same number more or less of voices without having to bring an extra piece of gear and trying to fit it in my backpack while I travel. And trying to get everything into carry-on luggage is really important to me. So the less boxes I can have, the better, which is why I took the Octatrack out of the setup and switched to the Meta. And it's why I took the Syntakt and the 1010 Black Box out of the setup as soon as I got the Digitakt 2. So it's, yeah, I don't really miss it. It's a great sounding synth, and I still have it. It's right over there. And I use it when I'm recording some of those loops. So some are from the modular, but some come from the Syntakt as well. Let's see. Hello, playing with the Oxy One and the, oh, weird, just went over that one. Oxy One and the iPad. Let's see. Going to KnobCon went last year. It is a good time. Yes, it is an absolutely great time. I love hanging out with people, like especially people. There's a lot of like people from the companies and like product experts, but also the people that make the modules or things that, the hardware gear. And then there's also, live performers. There's a lot of synth YouTubers that are there, which is kind of fun for me just to kind of hang out with my friends, because these are guys that I hang out with guys and girls that I hang out with, at KnobCon, at Superbooth, and it's a chance for us to just get together and hang out. Plus there's a lot that I don't get a chance to hang out with often other than here. Last year I had this really great breakfast and a great chat with Cameron, Venus Theory. And it was really cool because it was just like nice to hang out and talk about random stuff, whether it's, music or other stuff. So yeah, it's a very good time. There's a lot more social time than there is at other events. So let's see. Can I ask for your Octatrack template, by the way? I know it's EasyBot one, but there are 5 or 6 different ones. I don't know. So yeah, when I was using the Octatrack, I was using one of the older techno templates. The only thing I did was I went in and on the high pass filter, I added in some resonance to the reverb that was with it because I just like that sound a little more. But yeah, other than that, it was one of the older techno templates. So. Yeah, but again, there's so many of them that I would say go through and find the one that has the effects that you would use the most, not just the effects that someone else would use. Because like I reach for certain effects and that's why I use that template. But if there's other people that want things like beat repeats or effects that repeat over 8 bars in order to be able to transition or do something else, you would use totally different ones than me. So I would say definitely, download it, experiment around, and find out which has the best sounds for you, and then go from there. Let's see, are you still using Archer's Rig for perk voice instead of hats? Yes, I am. I think I went over that probably after you wrote that. Been too much fun performing close hat drops and messing with the decay. It is. It's it's it is fun, but I do that in the Dig Attack, so I don't necessarily need it in the Archer's Rig. But the Archer's Rig is a blast. Like when you put it on just the regular hi-hat part of it, it sounds great. It does like 909 hats really well. And so you can do closed hat, open hat, and it gives you like hands-on immediate control over filter and decay and tuning. So you can really quickly change it up and get a different hat, or you can really quickly change it up and kind of, it's very playable to kind of play the decay to open on certain things and kind of get a groove going like that. It's a lot of fun. It is a blast. I was, kind of skeptical about having drums in my case because I never really found any that I liked. These two, the battering ram and the Archer's Rig, I absolutely love them. Particularly the battering ram. I mean, I've said this before on these streams, but I've never heard another kick that I like more than this, including the ones that I make in the Analog Rhythm or that I make in a DAW or whatever. This thing sounds killer just all by itself and has a ton of control. So yeah, I'm all about it. All about it. See, looking forward to Griffin's Claws by Shackmat. Yeah, that one looks very cool as well. Performance fader controller. Yeah, it's cool. I played with it at Super Booth. They had one of them there, and yeah, it was really it was a lot of fun. The one that I'm interested in is the what is it called? The Centaur's Gate. That is a dual low pass gate. Sounds really good, and hopefully sometime soon I'll be able to get my hands on one so that I can try that. I think it would be cool to use that as the filter for a couple different voices here. I think that would be a lot of fun. Let's see. The Dig Attack is the Porsche, the Archer's Rig is the Lamborghini. Absolutely. Yeah, the decay times being together is cool. At first I was like, oh, that's a bummer. I don't have individual control, but I love it because it allows you to do two at once with one knob. It's like very cool. Immediacy of the Oxy is a big plus. It is definitely. Having a powerful piece of gear and keeping it simple. The thing, yeah, I'm with you, Rabbit. The cool thing with the Oxy one for me too is that you can normally when you get a new piece of gear that has its own sequencer, you have to learn a totally new workflow and learn that new sequencer and how it interacts with the gear and all that. And the reason why I kind of stick with the Oxy One and Electron sequencers is that the Electron sequencer is the same no matter which box you're using. So like, I remember when the Syntag came out, within like 2 minutes I was making music because it worked just like the Dig Attack. So it was really easy to jump right in. With the Oxy, what's cool with this is that whether you're sequencing things like modular that doesn't have sequencers, or sequencing things like a piece of hardware, or like like the Swarm, or the Sub 37 or something else, once you learn this workflow, that becomes your exact same sequencer workflow no matter what piece of gear you're using. And because of the flexibility of how you can send this out, it doesn't matter if you're using, a vintage, SH-101, or if you're using an iPad with a soft synth, you're still using the same workflow that you're comfortable with. So I love that, and that it's really flexible, that you can move it from gear to gear to gear very easily. So yeah, I'm a big fan. Let's see what else. Great to hear you again. Need to go to bed. Good night, Christopher. Let's see. Happy with the new Bitbox Micro. Awesome. Glad to hear that. Love the course. Extremely helpful. Thanks, Wabbit. I'm glad you got something good out of it. Thank you very much. Only need a good starting point to create my own stuff on Octatrack. Don't want to sound like anyone else. Yeah, I mean, the hard thing with the Octatrack, and especially when you're talking about building performance effects, is that it's really hard. like to start from scratch, I'm totally with you. It's really hard. So you need a starting point. The thing is with Matthew's templates, you can't change, like you can't copy an effect from one part to another part. So you have those ones that are there together because he uses different effects chains on each part. And so because of that, you can play around with that one part that you're working on, but it's hard. You can't really change up which effects are on which channel because those chains in certain orders are used on all of the effects in that part. So you can change the parameter locks of an individual effect to change parameters of the effects where they are for that one only, but you can't mix and match the effects in different ways without messing up all of the other effects in that part. And so it is really complicated. It's very deep. So I hope you know the Octatrack very well as you dig into that kind of stuff. Ask why you don't use the Octatrack anymore. Two reasons. One, because the main reason is for it, to be able to kind of lighten things up and carry less when I go perform. Most of my shows I travel to by plane, and I don't like to check any of my gear, so I like to take it with me in carry-on luggage. I actually like to take all my stuff, including clothes and toiletries and everything like that, in carry-on. So to be able to fit all of my gear and all of that stuff into a carry-on, I needed to kind of pare back as much as I could. I was able to do it with the Octatrack, but it was a giant pain in the ass trying to get that all to work. And so with this setup, this fits, the modular fits in one side of a rolling carry-on, and then the 3 boxes go into my backpack. And when I had also the 1010 black box and the Syntakt and the Octatrack, getting all that to fit was a real challenge. And I need to keep the second side of my rolling carry-on for clothes and toiletries and all that stuff for my 2 days away or whatever. So with this, it allows me to kind of narrow things down a lot. The second thing is, the Octatrack is an expensive piece of kit. The one that I have is one of the anniversary edition ones. So it's like, $1,700, $1,800, whatever. I don't know what they're worth on Reverb right now, but just the risk of carrying that around all the time to have it potentially break, it was just another thing to worry about, especially as I'm trying to kind of cram gear in because I didn't have a lot of space for it. So that's another reason why I pulled it out. And the third reason was to kind of simplify the workflow a bit. I didn't need, 64 different performance effects, particularly because of the style of music that I'm doing this kind of like more hypnotic techno style. I don't need glitchy beat repeat effects that are really more geared towards higher energy, like drum and bass or EDM style music. I wasn't using them because they would kind of break the mood of what I was doing. So I found myself going all the time to the most simple effects, being filters, reverb, delay, the Circo riser that he made for me. There's also a riser in the Meta. So I found myself going to those all the time, and the Oxy Meta has those already in this tiny little space that I can fit into my modular that's already going into my carry-on as well. So I didn't need to carry around with me an expensive piece of gear that was big and heavy and could potentially break just to use 3 or 4 effects that I found myself using most of the time when I can use those here. So that's why I pulled it out. I wasn't using any of the live looping for transitioning because I don't transition. I'm not going from one pre-prepared track to another pre-prepared track. So I didn't need that ability to loop and then transition to something else, which a lot of people do take advantage of that, which is great. Like if that's something you need, you should absolutely use the EasyBot effects template, just because it's, for the effects that it does, beat repeats, the 8-bar kind of movement effects that allow you to crossfade to an effect and then do other stuff while the effect is doing its own thing for 8 bars or 4 bars is really key in certain types of performance. So if you need those in your performance, I would say totally go for the performance. the performance template for the Octatrack. For me, I don't need those things. I want to be hands-on with it. And again, this comes from kind of my DJ background. I want to be able to have like high pass, low pass filter that I'm kind of using with my hands. I want to be able to have, you know, a build up or a breakdown that I'm using with my hands rather than fading to it and then letting it do its own thing while I do something else, because it's just not the style that I'm playing. But for a huge number of people, that is the style they're playing. So I would say absolutely go with that. But if you need something that's just kind of the basics, you can get away with something like the Meta if you already have a modular case. Now, another place where the performance mixer is really amazing and something it does that the Meta doesn't do is it is a standalone performance mixer and effects processing unit that you don't need to be a modular person to use. So if you're using hardware and not modular, so you don't already have a home for something like the Meta, then the Octatrack is totally your thing, because it saves you from having to have a mixer and it saves you from having to have a whole bunch of different effects pedals to be able to do what you want to do. So in that case, it's the smaller thing to travel with than trying to travel with a DJ mixer and, you know, 4 effects pedals that you put on sends from the DJ mixer. So again, it all comes down to what gear you already have and what you're trying to do in your live show, the way you're performing, and that will give you, that will help you decide like what kind of works better for whatever your flow is. So yeah, thank you for answering my questions. You're welcome. By the way, as you guys are all still hanging out here, please put in where you're listening from, because again, I love that. I love to hear kind of how far these live streams reach. It's fun for me from my basement in Colorado. Let's see, James, what are your go-to effects on the Meta? Kind of like I just said, you know, I'll use, here, I'll bring in. Just kind of back to what we were messing around with before, just to have something to listen to. So on the Meta, you've got filter with resonance down here. So if you take the resonance down, you've got, it's kind of your standard high pass filter, but if you add in the resonance to it, it becomes more like a DJ thing, right? More like a DJ style filter. So I use the filter a lot. And then you've also got low pass. Same idea. I also use the riser, which, as I mentioned before, I usually don't use this with the kick because it gets a little sloppy. So I'll pull out the kick and then use the riser. It's just like the Circo riser. It's kind of a high pass filter with a reverb wash, and that's on the right side of the knob, and then you can drop back in. You hear how the reverb kind of tails out. If you do it on the left side, it does the same thing, but it adds in a shepherd's tone. So you'll hear that rising tone in the background. It's a shepherd's tone, so it's overlapping harmonics, so it will continually rise, right? So if I just let that go, it'll rise and rise and rise and rise for as long as you want it to rise until you kind of hit back into you kill it back again. Right, so that's the riser. Then you have obviously reverb. And this controls how much reverb, or sorry, it controls which reverb. Right, so that's just your reverb stuff. Then you have a delay. This down here controls the speed of the delay, and this is wet dry. So you can get pretty crazy with it, or you can just kind of keep it relatively normal. Then you have gate, which this controls the speed of the gate, and this controls a wet-dry mix of the gate and the wet-dry mix of the signal. So you can see how it's gating in time, and you can change that speed. and this is clocked. So there are different clock divisions of what's going into it from the clock. And again, if you put this all the way on wet, it's completely on off. Or you can have different versions of it. If you turn this effect to the left, it becomes a snare roll. And that also has timing here, so it can be. Then you have a looper, and this looper is a different kind of looper than the one that's in the performance template. So this is more like a beat repeat style like you would have in a DJ mixer. And again, this is for timing. So you can hear it's looping that section, and this is the time. And then if you do the looper to the left side of the knob, it reverses the loop that it grabs. So yeah, so that's kind of all the effects that are on there, actually. So yeah, didn't do it. So they're not. So like in EasyBot's template, his effects tend to be effects that do something. So you can crossfade to something. You might have a 4-bar and 8-bar effect that will high pass through a certain thing and then transition to a delay and then come back to a thing. And so you can engage that effect, do something else, change settings, do whatever, and then at the end of the 8 bars you can fade back and it's your new thing that you've started to do. So it definitely has its place because you can't do that with the Meta. The looper is very quick. It's not grabbing something that you could, convincingly use to say like, oh, this is just the looper. I'm not playing my instruments anymore. And you can totally do that with EasyBot's template. With this one, you can't do that at all. But the other big thing is that with that template, you don't need to be hands-on for a lot of the effects. So you can move an effect over, let it do its thing, which frees up your hands to do other stuff, which can be really, really valuable when you're performing live. This one, my hand has to be turning the knob and then hitting the kill switch. So it's not, or changing up the timing of the thing. I can't just set it to do a snare roll that accelerates over 8 bars, right? So in those senses, there's a definite use for EasyBot's template. I was not using most of those effects, and so that's why I'm more using the Meta now, and I've kind of taken the Octatrack out of my setup. But again, it totally comes down to what you need for your type of music, your way that you're going to play your music. So anyway, let's see. So anyway, hopefully, James, that answered your question. Those are my go-tos. I guess that was all of them. All right, Australia, Germany, Detroit, Seattle. Sweet. So we've got Australia. It is Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon there, Sunday morning. Germany, it's the middle of the night. What are you doing up so late? It's like, what is it, 11 o'clock at night, almost midnight? Yeah, Seattle, sweet. And Detroit, awesome. Canary Islands, amazing. I haven't been to the Canary Islands in 25 years, at least. Years ago, I worked on a cruise ship in the Mediterranean, and before we did a crossing from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, we stopped in the Canary Islands. So that was the last time I was there. Sunday, 7:20 a.m. Okay, sweet. So yeah, 7:20 a.m. So this is your breakfast, right? Your breakfast techno that you get over there. But welcome. Glad to have you on board. Where are you in Australia? Pop that into the chat. I lived in Australia for a year and a half. That's why I was curious about that one. So another reason why I like to see where everybody's from is because there's a lot of places that I've been to or lived or traveled to, and it's cool to be able to connect with people that are from those places. I was just in Germany 3 months ago for Superbooth in Berlin, which was a blast, and then went to Belgium and then came back. So that was a ton of fun. Sydney, awesome. So are you a rugby league fan since you're from Sydney? Yeah. Or are you a Aussie Rules football, Sydney Swans, right? I think. Nice. Anyway, yeah, if there's other questions, feel free to pop them in. Happy to answer any of the questions on the jam I was doing before, on the gear setup, on the course that I give, any of that stuff. That would be awesome. Hello from Prague. Prague is on my extremely short list of travel destinations. I have never been, and I would love to go there. That would be amazing. Amazing, amazing. League. Yes, I still have from when I was there. So I was in the Whitsundays working for a resort as well. And I still have a Queensland state of origin jersey and a New South Wales state of origin baseball cap, because I didn't kind of have any allegiance and got those from folks that I worked with. So I still have those, which was a ton of fun. I loved watching League. It was great. I also have a Brisbane Broncos hat, because being from Colorado, we have the Denver Broncos. So I actually brought home a Brisbane Broncos hat for my dad, because it was almost the same logo, but it was totally different colors. So it made it kind of cool. It was something that nobody else would have here, which was a lot of fun. Yeah, so any other questions that anybody has out there on any of this stuff? Again, I'll do a little plug for the course, and then I have one other thing that I want to give you guys a little advance heads up about, which I think will be a lot of fun. First thing, the course, it starts September 5th. Pre-sale is on now. Spaces are limited and they're going away pretty fast. So if you would like to do that, sign up for it. circlelive.com/courses, or there's a link in the description of this video to go online and sign up for that. Again, it goes live September 5th, and then it's there for a month, and it's a 1-month intensive course. And then you have unlimited access after that to the videos. So you can rewatch them as many times as you want. You still get to be in the online community for as long as you want and kind of interact with everybody. And more people are being added with each session of the course. This is going to be the last session of the course until winter. So if you're on the fence about it, do it now. Because I just have a couple really busy months coming up, and it's going to be hard for me to keep things going that way. And so yeah, sign up for the course. If you have questions about the course, pop them into the chat. A bunch of people who have taken the course are in the chat, so they can answer them for you if you'd like. If you want to hear it from somebody else rather than my perspective doing the course, you want to hear it from someone's perspective of someone who has taken the course. The other thing that I want to let you guys know about, starting in this coming week, something that I've been wanting to do for a very long time, and I have finally gotten my act together to do this, is I will have a podcast going up on this channel, on this YouTube channel, starting on Tuesday, I think. It's going to be the first one, so in a few days here. And then it's going to be every Tuesday. It'll be a weekly podcast. It's called Inside Electronic Music. And instead of being like this kind of stuff where it's about gear and how to do stuff and teaching and kind of tutorials and that, and, gear, overviews and that, what the podcast is going to be is interviews with people who are involved in the electronic music industry in one way or another, trying to find people who have really interesting perspectives and interesting stories. For example, a friend of mine, Jason Timothy, wrote a fantastic book that you can get on Amazon and wherever you get books that's called The Mental Game of Electronic Music Production. And it's all about how to overcome writer's block, how to get good at producing music, how to kind of power through those difficult moments, how to structure your time so that you can more efficiently make music, how to, inspire creativity in yourself. It's a fantastic book. If you haven't read it, you should. Matthew EasyBot's going to be on there. We're going to talk about not only about his YouTube channel and that other stuff that you all know about him, but he also has a company called Modbang where he makes cables, he makes stands for the Electron devices, he makes magnetic things that you can put onto the devices that will help with the performance mixer, or you can write on with dry erase marker, you can write on your notes for when you play live. So it'll be I want to talk to him a lot about how he started a company and how he got to where he is, and get that perspective in case any of you are interested in the behind the scenes of that, or maybe you're thinking about starting your own company within the electronic music space. One of the ones I'm really looking forward to that I'm going to do in a couple weeks here is I'm going to interview a friend of mine named Jost Velmer, who is from Germany, and he used to be the CEO of Electron. And prior to that, he was in charge of product development for Native Instruments. So we're going to talk with him about the gear side of things, but not the how to use the gear, but what goes into, you know, designing, researching, you know, coming up with the software, the hardware, the, you know, the teams that go into that, the marketing, the how they decide what gear to use. So I can't wait to talk to him about that. That's going to be a really fun one as well. I have one coming up with Analog Kitchen, who you may have seen his course. His name's Lucien Fort, and he's from the Netherlands. We're going to talk about his musical history, because he had a chart-topping house hit back in the 90s, which caused him to explode to be one of the top most in-demand DJs in the world, traveled all over the world. Some of the biggest DJs that you've heard today, or legendary ones, were opening for Lucien back in the day. So we're going to talk with him about that, and then what he's doing today, besides the YouTube channel, which is he's doing some really cool educational things for underprivileged kids in the cities in the Netherlands. So we're going to talk about that, because another cool, interesting thing. So yeah, there's all kinds of things. Some YouTubers, some gear people, like on the manufacturing side. We're going to talk with Manuel, the guy who started Oxy Instruments. He's going to be one of the interviews, talking about how he did that, how he develops the things and all of that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Again, inside electronic music, it's going to be, there's a podcast, there will be a podcast playlist on this channel, so you can watch the video podcast. You can also see the video podcast on Spotify video, and then the audio podcast will be available everywhere where you get audio podcasts. So Spotify and Apple Podcasts and any of the others, anywhere else that you get those, that will be there. So should be a ton of fun. They'll be about an hour each, a little less, so that way we can get a good chance to dig deep into stuff, but not yap on too long, as I can do sometimes. So yeah, so that'll be a lot of fun, and I'm excited to finally be getting going with that. So subscribe to that on the podcast platforms, as well as checking it out here on YouTube. So that should be a lot of fun. I'm very excited. Something I've been wanting to do for a long time. So yeah, so it should be a good time. Let's see, what else do we have in here? I feel well on my way to becoming a techno god after taking the course. Thanks, James. James is he is a modular dude. He's got a cool modular setup, and gave him some new perspectives on how to do it, for sure. Let's see. All that sounds great. Awesome. Glad. Look forward to it. All this is awesome news. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be something different. I try to do something different in these live streams than what I do in the courses, and different also than what I'll be doing in the podcast. I want to try to have a broader sense, because I think, you know, there's a lot of people out there. Oh, I forgot to tell you, one of the other people, and this is an interesting thing too, is you may watch Ura on YouTube as well, but we're gonna do one of the podcast episodes. We'll be interviewing him and talking about how he makes his living from music, which is a lot of it is by doing scoring for commercials and film and things like that. So again, if you're thinking about doing any of these things, or you're just interested in other things, like how people are making a living at music, you know, not everybody's a superstar DJ producer or whatever. So I wanted to give everybody kind of an in-depth look into what's going on behind the scenes within the industry, to see if it's something you're interested in doing, or if you just are curious, want to find out more about it. So So Analog Kitchen is great as well. Recent vid was Hypnotic Techno Gold. Yeah, he and I were messaging last night. I was giving him some shit about it. I was like, welcome to the dark side of atonal improvised techno. And we were laughing about it because it's like, he's like, oh my God, it's so much fun. I'm like, yeah, it's a blast. It is a total blast to do this stuff. That was where the idea of the course came from, was that I have so much fun myself doing this, whether I'm playing in front of a crowd or doing a YouTube video or just jamming by myself. I have so much fun doing this, and I wanted to do a course where I could help people get over the struggle of learning all of the bits and pieces and trial and error to get to the point where you can do it yourself to have the same amount of fun. Whether you perform in front of a crowd or whether you're just doing this in your bedroom, it doesn't matter. It's just a way to make you more confident and comfortable with it in order to have more fun doing it. You know, there's some people on here, like Wabbit, for example. He took this because he wanted to play better himself, wanted to just have more fun doing it himself. And then you've got other people who are like, no, I want to get gigs, I want to travel, I want to tour. Okay, cool. There's a lot of stuff about that too. There's a whole section in the course about how to get gigs, how to get booked, how to market yourself, how to, the etiquette of how you act when you go perform in a gig, the different types of gigs that you might want to play. Like, do you want to play showcases? Do you want to play DJ set or DJ nights, club nights, and all of that stuff? How do you get those things? What do you bring with you? How do you pack your gear? What backups do you use? So all of that stuff is included in the course. So it's a ton of fun. So I would definitely recommend it for anybody who's interested. Maydon, hey May, what's going on? May is an absolutely fantastic techno DJ, performer, producer, live hardware performer. She's a label owner. She is a resident DJ at Tresor in Berlin, and a good friend of mine. And so thanks for popping in. Good to see you on here. Our chats are usually about like, I've got the Oxy, what do I do? How do I make it work? And then she's like, oh my God, this thing's amazing. Or, oh, this thing sucks. How do I do this? So it's a lot of fun. And then I reach out to her like, hey, what do you think about this thing? What do you think about this idea or this track or whatever? So awesome to see the friends on here. So thanks for popping in, May. If you haven't checked out Maydon's stuff, go check it out. You can see her stuff on, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. So definitely check out her stuff. She is awesome. Her music is phenomenal. And she has a bunch of new music coming out. So definitely follow her and check it all out, because I've been fortunate enough to hear all of her new stuff that's coming out, and it is fucking crazy good. So definitely check her out and follow her stuff for when you get it. I actually have over here, check this out. I have right here in the background, check this out. This is one of her records that I got from her when I was in Berlin. Actually on her record label. So check out her label, Rant and Rave, which is also really cool too. So when's Maydon's interview? I actually haven't asked her yet. May, would you like to do an interview in my upcoming brand new podcast that will come out? Not to put you on the spot here, but yeah, that would be awesome. That would be another totally sweet, amazing perspective into the inside electronic music, as the podcast is called. So yeah, that would be a very cool one. If she'll do it. If she won't, I get it. No pressure. You don't have to. We'll just keep our chats to ourselves. That can be fun too. But yeah, so anyway, what's really fun with the course is that it really doesn't matter what level you're at. Like there's some people in the course who have just been kind of knob twiddlers, kind of gear collectors, learning how to do it, that want to learn how to play songs, how to play live, and they get a lot out of the course. Then there's people who have been doing this, they've already performed out a few times, and they want to get better. Then there's people who are doing like pre-prepared live stuff, and they want to get better at shifting things a bit more to the improvised side. So the course is really all about it has a major focus on improvised live performance. We talk a bit about how to prepare stuff, but it's not really about that, because I think there's a lot of information out there about that, and there's a lot of YouTube videos that you can watch and all that stuff. But on the improvised side, there's not much methodology about how to improvise improvised. Everything that I was able to find, and this was why I decided to do the course, everything I was able to find was kind of like, yeah, you want to improvise? Just, I don't know, start doing it, right? And that was the extent of the advice that I was finding. And so with this is, the course is called the Hardware Performance System, because it really is a system. It's like how you build, how you set up, how you arrange your gear, how things interact with one another, in a way that allows you to be able to improvise. And then there's some skills, like things we've been talking about today, plus a whole bunch more about how to actually improvise. Like, what are the things you want to do and not do? What are the kind of pitfalls and things to watch out for? What type of gear lends itself to improvised performance versus what stuff that's much better for pre-preparing stuff? I've tons of gear surrounding me in this studio, and 90% of it will never be used in a live performance, only because it either doesn't lend itself to live performance, or it's too big to travel with, or it's too specific a sound and it doesn't have enough variety of sound to be able to improvise on it. So a lot of stuff I use for production, but never really kind of makes it to the performance world. So yeah, so it's awesome. Let's see, I'm like 10 minutes behind. Podcast sounds amazing. Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm super stoked for it. I think it's going to be a total blast. May, no matter where you are in your musical journey, being open to listening to others, learn from others, it really helps. Perspective is everything, and everyone's perspective is unique. Totally. I look at it in that, I remember years ago when, like, Tiger Woods, the golfer, I remember when he was winning everything. He was the best golfer in the world. He won every single tournament everywhere. And I remembered seeing an interview with his coach. And I was like, you think about it for a second, you're like, this guy is the best in the world. Why does he need a coach? And then when you start to think about it, it's like, okay, no matter how good you are at anything, it's incredibly valuable to have, like May just said, it's incredibly valuable to have another perspective, another set of eyes or ears, or somebody to be like, hey, have you thought about it this way? Or did you, have you ever thought about trying this? Or let's work on this thing that I'm seeing you do that you're not seeing you do. You don't feel it, but somebody else might see it. And so giving that other perspective, having that other perspective can really be valuable no matter what stage you are in your musical learning world. You may be a beginner and have lots of things that people can help you out with, and you may be, advanced, expert touring the world, but you still want another set of eyes. You may be the world champion like Tiger Woods, but you want that other set of eyes on what you're doing and offering up some suggestions. And the person that's doing that doesn't necessarily have to be even as good as you are. They just have to be good at seeing things and offering up ways to do it. So that's why I've kind of gone that way with my teaching and courses and one-on-ones and all that stuff. So yeah. Hey, CC. Always have a team, friend you can bounce ideas off of. Yes, indeed. That is super important. Yep, right, bud. When you dive in the modular world, it's a serious rabbit hole. It is totally a rabbit hole. It's funny, you talk about the modular world being a rabbit hole. When I first started into modular, I really leaned on my friends a lot. And a lot of them from watching on YouTube, but like Travarsi and Ihor and people like that, I reached out and I was like, man, I'm overwhelmed. This is too much. There's too many choices. I don't know where to go. I don't know where to start. And they were really helpful to kind of point me in the right direction to get started, because I didn't even know what I didn't know at that point. So I obviously couldn't make decisions about what gear to buy because I didn't even know what I wanted it for yet. Then the farther I got into it, now it's like, I know what I want. I know specific things. So, if something comes out that's really cool, I'll be like, oh, that's neat, but I don't really need it because it doesn't, I've already got a thing that does that, or it doesn't fill a certain space in my setup. And then there's other times where something will come out, like, like the battering ram, for example, and I was just like, oh my God, that is the best of that thing. So I want that to add it to my setup because it'll really add something, and not just be another thing that you just waste a bunch of time. You waste money buying, then you waste all your time learning how to do it and reading the manual and whatever, and you never spend any time making music. But then there's certain things that come out, like the battering ram, where it's easy to use, it sounds amazing, and you can just like figure it out really quickly and just keep going with making music, and it actually helps your sound better in a more efficient way because you don't have to do a whole bunch to it. I don't do anything to it. Honestly, the kicks that you were hearing in this, and I'll just kind of set it to my kind of favorite settings. Hearing a kick drum like that kick sound that you hear right, that is this module going through absolutely nothing. That is just that kick. There's no filter, there's no compressor, there's no EQ, there's no effects, there's no nothing. It's just that module. And it sounds that good by itself, and no matter what settings you put it on. So with something like that, it's like, okay, yeah, well, that's a no-brainer. That's something that really does help, rather than just like, oh, it's the coolest thing that you've ever had before. So anyway, let's see. I noticed the Metron in the background in one of your videos. I have one and I love it, but I guess the Oxy is like more flexible. How much do you like the Metron? I love the Metron as an in-the-case modular sequencer. My Metron is right over there in my studio case, and I have it. I love it as a drum sequencer, first and foremost, because having the different lanes is great. It has less control over tone, so it's much better for drums for me. I like the fact that you can build some patterns and keep them, but I don't play that way very often. So for me, the Oxy has a lot more flexibility. The reason why I use the Oxy and not the Metron or not, a bunch of these others that are out there is I love that I can quantize this to key. I can lock it to a key. And then, like when I go to a sequencer, I know that every note that's on here is gonna fit in that key. So I don't have that extra thing to worry about while I'm performing live, right? So like what I was doing earlier, so like, what is this? So if I was using this, I can just mess with it. So I can just put something like that in, and I know it's going to be in key. I don't have to worry about that. And I can just like draw stuff. And then I can spend the time where I really love to spend the time, which is sound design. So I can come up with something really quick. I know it's in key, so I know it's going to fit. And I can modify it really easily. I can take out steps, I can draw stuff in, I can do whatever I want really quickly, and I know it's gonna always be in key. So that allows me to not worry about that. The other thing that it does as well, which I really love, is it's got random note generation. So let's say I wanted to generate notes and rhythm. I can just hit this button. Now I have a new, and it's in key, or I can hit another one. So you can generate something randomly like that, and if you don't like it, just generate again. Or generate another one. And then if you want to go back, you can just go back. You can undo or you can redo. Right? So you can generate randomly. What I love about the Oxy though, what makes this different from a lot of other sequencers is, let's say I do something that's a pattern that I like, I don't know, I don't even know what this is gonna sound like, but just on one note. So let's let's say I like that pattern, like that rhythmical pattern, but I want to generate random notes in key. I can generate random pitch separate from gate, meaning I can leave those random, I can leave that set pattern that I created in a way that I like it. I can let that go, and then when I press this button, I can move those notes, just the note part, just the pitch part. So for example here, it keeps the same rhythm, but it randomly generates notes in key. Then I can hit again. So again, being able to separately or together generate random notes in key is, for me, one of the biggest values of the Oxy. So I prefer to write my rhythms, because there'll be things that I know that I want something to be a certain way. So like, for example, if I want it to be kind of a bouncy sounding rhythm, so to be more on the upbeat, have it be like more syncopated on the upbeats, I can do that. I can set that in a certain way and then say, okay, but I want to keep that rhythm and that groove, but I don't know what I want as far as the kind of melodic part of it. So then I can just randomly generate that. Or I can make it really wide. You can see how quickly you can just jump right into something, right? So it's, for me, that's what's so important with this, is to be able to do that quickly and with a certain amount of kind of guardrails of control live in a performance, so that I don't have to stress about doing a wrong note. Is the pattern right? Do I generate something random, but then maybe it's gonna suck and it's gonna change the rhythm that I actually had this groove going and I really liked it. Well, if I have that groove going, let's say I like that groove, but I want to do a different section and I want to change it up, you know, maybe for a break. So I'm going to keep the same pattern, but just change up the notes. So you see what I mean? So you can bounce back and forth. You can keep your same groove going while you also generate new random things. And so that is really, for me, the value of the Oxy. That's why I'm using this and not the Metron. I can't do that in the Metron. With the Metron, if you use the Volterras, you can kind of twist as you put things in to kind of randomly come up with notes. But and you can do that quantized to key now with an update that they put in. But being able to do that in a really easy way, button press, and have some control over it, where you can then see the pattern and you can go in and adjust it. So like, let's say I was doing that with this, and I wanted, you know, this note to be different. I can just change it. And if I liked it more where it was before, I can just go back to it. Right? So having that kind of one-touch, super fast ability to generate new stuff and then go back and forth between it, for me, is totally the key to the Oxy. And that's why I'm using it instead of the Metron or other ones. They're great for certain things. Like, I love with the Metron that you can write a pattern while another pattern is playing, and then you can move it over to that, which I think is really very cool. And it was really handy when I was using that. But having this has made me use that one a lot less. I do like to use that to sequence modulation, which is really fun too, especially with the Volterras. Which you can do with this, but that way I can kind of separate out jobs, and I know if I'm using both, I know that that one is doing modulation and this one is doing sequencing. So it just makes it that much simpler. So let's see here. Yeah, I have a couple Volterras on mine, definitely helps, yes, for sure. You have the torso similarly. I like how you can see the lanes on the Oxy. Yeah, the torso is very cool. I love it as a sequencer. I love some of the algorithms and the random generation in the torso. For me, where the Oxy gives me a lot more flexibility is the number of tracks that you can sequence with this and the number of outgoing lanes, meaning of connectivity. So having 8 CV and 8 gate plus 48 tracks of outgoing MIDI and being able to sequence up to 32 tracks plus modulation lanes means that you just have this ridiculous amount of flexibility of what you can do with this. And I love the fact that it's a simple enough interface that you can use those things or not. So if you're not using them, keep it basic and just keep it like really simple, like what I'm doing. Or if you want to use those, you know they're there. You know the ability to use them is there. So yeah, it's a beautiful piece of kit. It's totally changed the way I play live. I want the Oxy, geez, yeah, it's. Sorry, this wasn't a sales pitch, by the way. This was just a, hey, here's gear that I dig. Let's see, there's a quick way to switch notes octave on that without scrolling. Not sure what you're asking. The way to do it is to do it on the knob. So for example, if I'm playing along, let me just clear this out. So do something really easy here. So let's say I want this note to jump an octave. I can hold this down and I have an octave choice here. So I can go up 1 or up 2, or sorry, that was 4. Or I can go down. And so I can go in and mess these around. So again, you can quickly go in and change octave like that. So again, and when you're doing the random note generation, there's a range here and it's a percentage. So you can go from plus 1% all the way up to plus 24, and that will go only up from the root note. So when you press it, you're going to keep everything from the root note up. Then if you go to the plus minus side, you can go plus minus 1% all the way to 24%. So if you do, let's put it at like, I don't know, 12%, and then you generate, some notes will jump up. That's what these white ones are here. It's this note up an octave. Let me generate. So, and when it's a red, it's this note down an octave. So then so these are up an octave, this is down an octave. And then these ones that don't have a red or white are just in that main octave. So again, super quick and super easy to get ideas going and to retain control over gate and pitch separately from one another, which I think is super important. Let's see here. Where were we? Is there a quick way? Oh yeah, we just did that one. How would the Oxy differ from the Deluge or the Push? Ooh, that's a tough question because they're entirely different machines. So the Deluge is a groove box. It is a sequencer, synth, sampler, CV gate out controller, song arranger. Like it does all of the things, like any other kind of all-in-one Groovebox. The Push, if you're talking about Push 3 standalone, it does even more all the things because it's basically Ableton in a piece of hardware. So you've got kind of infinite tracks, infinite effects, infinite number of things with really a ton of control over everything. So those are totally different things. The Oxy is a sequencer, period. It doesn't make sounds, it doesn't sample, it doesn't do any of that stuff. However, as a sequencer, like if you were to compare this to either of those, because, you know, to give you an example, I use my Oxy One to sequence Ableton when I'm producing, right? I don't use the Ableton sequencers because they're super clunky. They don't have this kind of flexibility or this kind of interface, and it's really hard. There's some Max for Live ones, and you can combine them in different ways in order to make them do what this does, but this just does it. So as a specialized sequencer, for me personally, the way I play and the things that I need out of a sequencer, I think the Oxy One is the best one out there. I also love the Torso T1, and I also love the Squarp Hapax. I think they're both really good as well. This is smaller, it's battery powered, it has way more connectivity and flexibility. The things that you can do with this, you just can't do with the others. And it's in a small package that's super well built, and it's battery powered, which I love. I had it charging because the battery was dead, but I can pull the plug out and it's still doing the same thing. The other thing that this has too that's really handy if you travel is it has Bluetooth MIDI. So if you want to write patterns, you can take this with you, put a soft synth on your phone, pop in your AirPods from your phone, and without needing any power cables, any MIDI cables, any connectivity of anything, headphones, any of that, you can write patterns on the Oxy using the soft synth and listening on your headphones, on your AirPods, and then you can save that, and when you get back to your studio or your live performance rig or whatever, you just change the routing, and instead of having it being sent via Bluetooth MIDI to your phone, you have it send via CV and gate to your modular. And that pattern that you created on the fly while you were traveling or on the bus or whatever, you can then actually functionally use somewhere. You can do that with things like the Push, which is way bigger, or you can also do that with things like the Deluge. But the Deluge, because it does so many things, the focus is not as much there. So that, you know, like this mono sequencer view is basically like the Deluge view. You can sequence very much the same way as you can on here. But the Deluge, just because of the way it's set up and the number of things it does, there's a lot more menus, there's a lot more things to dive through, where this is very hands-on, kind of on the surface. So very much a specific sequencer, this one. And the others are more all-in-one Grooveboxes. What is the bass module? So the one I was just playing is the Bastel Pizza. So it's an FM bass module. Hapax, the only other sequencer I know of. Yes, absolutely. Hapax is a good one. The Pizza, I think, or Erica Sense. I use both of those. So this one is the one I was just using. That's coming from the Pizza. The Erica Sense bass line is on a different channel. That's this one. So that's the same thing, but on the Erica Sense bass line. It's the same idea. Let's see here. Yeah, it seems pretty dope. I'm trying to resist. Resist. Definitely resist. It's, yeah, I don't know. Did any of you guys watch the Midlife Synthesist video that he put out today. It was all about kind of like shilling for gear. And one of the things he said would really hit me, because it's the same way I look at it, which is I only really talk about gear on here that I like. So that's why it comes off really positive sometimes. It's not that I'm trying to sell you something. It's that I'm explaining why I like a certain thing. I'm not here to say, here's the goods and bads. I'm not Lupop walking you through like all the ins and outs of how the gear works. And you know, I'm not, you know, somebody who's like paid to do a paid sponsorship and say, hey, this is the best thing, when it's not. I only really put stuff on here that I like myself. So that's why it tends to be overly positive. If I don't like it, you won't see it here. Like, I don't have anything in my studio or in my live setup that I don't like. If I don't like it, I sell it to somebody else who will like it, you know? And just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's bad. It means that it's not for me. So I send it for other people. So anyway, yeah, with an iPad, that sounds amazing. Yes, it is amazing. iPad, iPhone, anything, Bluetooth MIDI is great. You don't have to worry about latency because you're sequencing. You're not playing. I mean, you can play it in the keyboard mode, but you don't have to worry about that if you're sequencing stuff. So then you can sequence patterns. You can go into the pattern mode. You can save them. Then you can take those blocks and build those into tracks, and it becomes a song mode. And then when you come back to your studio, you can be like, okay, I've got my song all laid out. Now I want to send this to that synth or this modular or that synth or that drum machine. And all of a sudden this can control all those other things, but you didn't have to take all those other things with you on the airplane in order to make the sound, right? So it's, I don't know, it's cool. I dig it for that. So anyway, I think we've yapped on for long enough today. I appreciate you guys all tuning in. If you're interested in the course, there's a link in the description of the video below, or you can go to circlelive.com/courses. Definitely keep an eye out for the podcast that's going to be starting this coming week. And yeah, if you want to do the course, I would love to see you there. The September 5th course session is going to be the last one until the winter. So definitely, if you're on the fence about it, definitely sign up for this one, because it's going to be a while before the next one comes out. So thank you guys all very much for tuning in. It's been really awesome to have you here. I appreciate the support from all over the world. Thank you guys so much. And I hope to see you guys soon. Take care.